Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Beattys Fly Tying Friday. Today, 7th of April, 2023, we're going to be demonstrating some LaFontaine flies. And the weekly tip, we're going to be doing some braiding on flies, and our friend Sherry Steele actually is going to be helping with that from afar. You'll find out how in just a moment, after we get through with the fly tying. Because this fly is probably the ugliest fly you're going to see. There is no way to make the doggone thing look good, but there's something about it that just catches fish. And it's one of those LaFontaine flies that when he told us about it, we just said, no way. And we kind of kept it in the background until the story that I'm going to read to you right now opened up. Anyway, Gretchen called at me one day while we were at our cabin on the river, and I was having trouble getting the weed whacker started, and was more than happy to take a much needed break. Have you ever noticed what a miserable piece of equipment a gas engine can be when it decides it doesn't want to start? I pondered. I wandered over to the gazebo by the water to see what the topic of her question could be. Look at this, she prompted as I walked up, putting the trimmer on the ground. It's the biggest midge I've ever seen. There on the gazebo screen with a gray body adult midge that had to be at least a size 10, maybe even an 8. The morning dew and chill in the air had it anchored to the screen, giving us ample time to study it. Further investigation brought a whole plethora of aquatic insects to our view on the screen, waiting for the warming morning air. In the meantime, we could study them at our leisure, and study them we certainly did. It's amazing what a grown man will do to get out of work, I thought to myself, glancing at the recalcitrant trimmer sitting on the ground. Without really realizing, we had stumbled onto a bird's eye view of the bugs available to the trout in the river where our cabin was situated. It was like using a seine in the current, but we didn't have to put on the waders and enter the water to study the biomass. It was right in front of us. I grabbed my magnifying glass out of my Delorme map of Idaho and went to look at the insects a bit closer. I had never taken the time to see them in such detail, and the experience was really interesting. There were many more large midges than I ever realized. I asked Gretchen and myself, should we have been using some larger midges last night when we tried our luck on the river? I didn't get an answer because I heard the door slam as she was headed for the water. Anyway, it goes on to explain that we went to the river and did incredibly well on this crazy LaFontaine pattern that Gretchen decided to give a try. The one that you see the recipe on screen. And in fact, we both were fishing it, and I was fishing it with as a dropper under the fly that I'm going to tie tonight, which is the lime double wing. But the funny thing that happened to me most of the time in this section of river, we never had caught anything bigger than maybe 17 inches. You know, most of the fish in there were 13 to 15, 16 inches, just a lot of fun, but that was it. And the fish that I picked up on the variegated midge, well, it had a tail, it looked like it was, from a distance, it looked like it was as wide as some of the fish that I've been catching were long. But anyway, this darn fish just chomped onto the fly and shook his head a couple times and headed downstream, and I finally had to drop the line and break it off when I could only see a couple of turns of backing on the reel. So you're going to look at this and you're going to say that we are full of it, and okay, that's fine. But if you want to treat yourself, just tie one. It's so darn easy, you won't believe it. And have a couple in your fly box. Smaller sizes, bigger sizes, but giving it a try. And Gretchen, at this point, we turn it over to you.
As you can see here, this is my material right here. You need olive and red marabou, olive thread. I'm tying with a size 12. It's just a 1X. Today when I was practicing, I was thinking, I wish I had more, but once I got myself in gear and worked on this fly a little bit, that worked fine. This is lure flash, which is white Antron that we use. And then this stuff here is called Quick Fingers, and I don't know if it's still available, but you can get clear Antron other places because this was some stuff we got years ago when we were working with Gary. And it, it doesn't take much of it. So it seems to just last forever and ever. So let's go to the go-to fly. This is what I'm going to tie. And I have to tell you, I like to tie pretty flies. So this has been a difficult transition for me in a way to tie some of, because not all of, Gary has had some pretty flies, but a lot of his flies were pretty ugly. So it wasn't my favorite fly to tie, but I love fishing with it. So I tie it, and I don't know what else to say. Sometimes you just have to put up with it. So we'll get started. And there's a couple of tips that I had kind of forgotten and had to remind myself today because I hadn't tied any of these in a while. So we start out just with our regular base wrap, about an eye length back from the eye. And the directions say start right at the eye. And that's because we kind of wrote these directions like Gary does. And Gary was not a fly tyer. So sometimes we kind of had to modify a little bit of what we're doing. So I started back here. I need to put my magnifiers down. Okay. And just like usual, tie my regular wrap. By the way, today when I started tying with this particular bobbin, I was very, very frustrated because it was too loose and my thread kept getting too long. I don't know if you guys do this or not, but what I do when the bobbin is too loose is I take it, and it has come undone. So I take it and I pull it around like this so that it
goes around one leg of the bobbin.
Goes around one leg of the bobbin, and that way it'll still pull out, but it won't get too long. And somehow that came undone when I quit today, so I had to get that back. So that gives me a little more control. So if your bobbin is slipping on you, that's a good thing to do. Okay, now we want to go right to the end of the bend, and I'm going to stay right there. The directions say to tie the marabou on by the base. Well, if I were tying a size 4, that might work. But this is a size 12 I'm tying. And so you have to kind of modify it a little bit. So what I worked on today was how much of this do we really need? So as you can see, I've taken some already. So I'm going to pull this back. Let's see here. Where do I want to get this? Right here will be fine. What I'm looking for is to get the short fibers, and for this size, I only need about 6 of them, and I'm going to cut them off. That's all I've got. Now, the other thing I figured out is all of that fuzz there at the base makes that first turn too bulky. So I started pulling on some of these fibers and getting rid of them. So now I pretty much have bare stem, and I want a little bare stem showing. So my first wraps aren't going to be too bulky. Okay, I was trying to make it pretty. I don't know if all this is necessary, but for me it was, so I'll share it with you. Okay, same thing with this olive. Okay, that looks like about 6. Gonna cut it. You pull it off, it doesn't want to stop, and you get too much, so I found it's better just to cut it. There again, I'm going to dress that all back. Something else, a lot of people dampen marabou to work with it, and I don't recommend it because you don't get the look you want, which you'll see later on what I'm trying to do. So here I'm going to pull off some of these initial fuzz and tie on again, so I've got some bare stem. Trim off that a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go right back. Make sure, I'm just going to make sure I've got that right where I want it. Now, the next thing that we're going to put on is this clear Antron. And we don't need very much of it. So today I was going, how can I describe the amount that I'm going to use so I can communicate that? So basically, it's about the outside diameter of the eye when you twist it. Now let's twist this over and see what it looks like. Little bit fat. I want to trim this off so that it's even. Tie it on out here a little ways. Really don't have to be too careful with that process because it's not a pretty fly. I lost a couple of them. I'm going to put them back in there. And this, I don't know if you noticed, but on my go-to fly, I had some fibers of this Antron sticking out, and Al started to cut them off today. And I said, no, I think with Antron sticking out like that, it's going to refract the light. So I think it might actually be attractive to the fish. So we left it on there. So what we want to do now is I'm going to go back. And then I've got to have a test clip. And I didn't get one. Sorry. Okay, here's my test clip. Now, this is important. When I started out today, I was twisting counterclockwise. That's exactly the opposite of what you want to do. You want to twist clockwise. Because just like with dubbing, oops, there's a long one, I'll get rid of it. Just like with dubbing, it'll come loose as you twist it if you do it. I should put that back there. There we go. If you do it counterclockwise, because I'm wrapping clockwise. I think maybe life would be easier for me if I just cut that off. There we go. Like I said, it's not a real pretty fly.
But I got to say, Gretchen, the way that one's turning out, that's pretty good looking fly for an ugly fly.
Yeah, it took a lot of effort today to get me here. But I'm pretty pleased with that, actually. I hate to admit it, but I am. White lure flash Antron, body wool, they call it. And I want to get a really, I got way too much. Really short little stub here. I think I need to put some thread down. As short as I can get it. Do a finger thumb tuck. Tie that on. Then I want to come here in front and take some wraps. Now I want to cut this about 2.5 eye lengths. So about like that. Whoop. And what I found is I can pull this a little bit forward. And this is a little not quite even, so I'm going to trim that off. There we go. And now all I have to do is my whip finish. Starting back and coming forward. And then I would normally put some cement on there. Okay, that's it.
Fred Dupre says, how does it float? How do you fish this?
Well, we fish it on a dropper under a attractor generally, and we like to use the double wing. And it really doesn't float that much. It kind of,
No, it pretty much is
Kinda
in the surface film
flip-
kind of the thing.
so it just kind of trails along behind that attractor. You really need, I really like the double hook on that, or double fly on that. I don't think I've ever fished it without it. Have you?
I haven't. I've always had some kind of a top line.
You know, that when you come around and on the dead drift, and just before you start pulling it in, wiggle it a little bit,
Yeah.
and that seems to attract the fish pretty good. I think I caught probably 50% of the flies I've caught, or the fish I've caught, have been at that point.
Yeah, but just don't discount this as being, because it looks nothing like the midges that you see as an example that we saw on the screen of the gazebo, because even though it didn't look anything like them, there must be trigger points in the design of that fly that, anyway, it works awful darn good for
Well,
whatever
I
reason.
think it's the antron that causes that little halo effect. And then I think
be.
red and green, red and olive marabou gives you some motion and some, remember to twist that clockwise, or you will go through what I went through today when I had forgotten that's what I needed to do. And suddenly I'm sitting there thinking, oh, this is just like dubbing. I need to be twisting clockwise.
Yeah, she was coming up with some pretty gobby looking messes. And
Gretchen,
anyway,
those hackle pliers had a long handle. Did y'all add a handle to a
No,
plunger?
no. Where did we get these?
those are electronic test clips, and you can just go on to Google and type electronic test clip, and then you should go to should end up taking you to a site. I can tell you what the name, you got the name there, Gretch?
Easy Mini Hook XL.
It's a easy mini hook.
And it's E/Z Mini Hook XL.
But an electronic test clip will get you there, and then it'll get you to a site, and then you just look for the size you want. That this length is an awful good one for dubbing loops. It's my favorite dubbing loop tool, and it's not a dubbing loop tool.
Yeah, we got dubbing loop tools, but I always pick that up
Yeah.
because, you know, you can have all the tools in the world, but when you get too many of them on your desk, then you can't find what you want. So I kind of have tried to eliminate some things, and that's when we have eliminated some. So you want my place?
You ready to switch places here? You take that mic off and put it over there. I'll get this one off. This is the book that we wrote as a result of our work with Gary. We spent a lot of time together. We had talked about writing a book together of some of his new patterns. And then one day in the early 2000s, I think it was about 2002, something like that.
Yeah, it's after we moved here, wasn't it?
No, we were still in Delta. We were just a couple of days before going to the Denver show.
That's right.
Anyway, the phone rang and it was Gary, and he sounded really bad. And he said, Al, I'm not going to make it. Would you write the book? And I said, I'll take care of it. And that's this book right here that we put together out of the notes. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about, and I talk about often, is the LaFontaine theory of attraction. And just set that over there. Put it under the, okay, good. One of the things that I wanted to talk about on the theory of attraction, that Gary wrote a section for this chapter that we're going to do, which is on the double wing. And in fact, that chapter starts on page 110 of the book, if you happen to have the book. It's called The Lady Heather Double Wing. But anyway, just interesting, Gary always tied that fly on a short shank hook. That's the way it was in the original book that he published it in a long time ago. It was, I think, Dry Flies Proven Patterns was the name of the book.
It was just a double wing. It wasn't the Lady Heather.
Yeah. Now, as you see this would go together today, or this evening, I'm going to be using a 2X long hook, which is 1X longer than what Gary used. I said, both Paul and I, we were tying commercially for Gary at the time, and this is one of the patterns we were tying. I said, Gary, please let us start using something longer, because that 1X long hook you got, all the materials we have to put on there, there's no room. Even if you're a good tyer, there's no room left for all the materials. So he finally agreed to let us start using a longer shanked hook. And so I asked him, Gary, why in the heck did you use a regular dry fly hook instead of something a little longer? He said, well, when I was writing Dry Flies Proven Patterns, Tiemco was sponsoring me, and that's the hooks they sent me. Was dry fly hooks. So that's what I used. And that was in all the illustrations. And of course, what Gary did in the books, they were all line drawing illustrations. He had an artist do the drawing for him, but he would tie the steps. So he tied all the steps and then gave the steps to the artist, and they did the drawing. So the recipe calls for a TMC 100. And if you want to use a TMC 100 to be going in line with what the original was published as, please be my guest. I'm going to be using a 2X long tonight, and I even considered using a 3. You'll see why, because there's a lot of material that goes onto this thing. Now, I want to talk to you for a minute about the theory of attraction. Let's see, I've got some information here from Gary. Okay, while we were still kicking around, before Gary called and said that he wasn't going to be able to finish the book with us, he had sent information to me and said, please use it in the publication if you can find a place to fit it in. And this is written by Gary, and I'm just going to read the first couple of paragraphs because it's got some pretty important information. It's called The Magic of the Double Wing by Gary LaFontaine. He states, there is no formula for attractor dry flies, and it applies not only to double wings, but to wolfs, trudes, humpies, stimulators, or any style of attractor that comes in a series of colors. The formula is deceptively simple, but it will increase the catch rate for attractors by 20 to 30%. Here's the formula. Match the main color of the attractor dry fly to the color of the prevalent light. Why does this magic formula work so well? Get in a car and drive around sometime at dusk. Really look at things when the light is intensely orange. Pick out things that are warm colors, things that are red or orange. Look how they look. They are on fire. It's because they are the same color as the prevalent light. They are absorbing all of those orange light waves and bouncing them back. The same thing happens with every other color. Green things will bounce back green light waves, and yellow things will bounce back yellow light waves. So all you need to do is follow the formula to have an intensely bright fly. And it goes on to explain a whole lot of other things. You'll have to buy the book to find out what the rest of it says. But anyway, I'm going to tie the line version of the double wing. And the reason there's 12 double wings, this is funny. We're sitting with Gary scripting for the Lady Heather, scripting for one of the videos. I forget which one it was. The Lady Heather wasn't even considered. And it was Paul and Char Stimson who commercially tied for Gary, and Gretchen and me, and we tied for Gary. Plus we sold him a lot of products. And Paul was saying, or Gary was saying, I want to come out with a feature box of flies that features all of our double wings as part of my theory of attraction that's going to go along with the book. Good idea. And Paul says, Gary, there's one problem. You've only got 11 double wings. We need to have 12 so we can just make it an even dozen double wings. That sounds really cool. Dozen double, don't you think? Well, yeah, he says, that sounds like a good idea. Let's design one. And that's what we did. And that turned out to be the Lady Heather double wing that starts on page 110 of the book. But anyway, I'm going to do the lime version because why lime? Well, I told you I don't like catching carp and big fish that are bigger than me in saltwater. I like alpine forest, and that's what central Idaho has. And guess what alpine forest is mainly? in the color of it, in the theory of attraction and the color. And that's green. So that's why I'm doing lime tonight. To the materials, and now I'll just slide Gretchen's materials over and I'll get mine over here. Let's see, what do I need first? Oh, we need the fly. We need to have a fly in the, get our roadmap fly up here. While I'm digging out materials, why don't you go back to, there we go. That's what we're going to be tying. And I'll get my material and stuff out here.
You didn't put the materials up on the screen yet,
Oh, that's
did you?
good. Why don't you go to recipe 2? Yeah, there's the lime double wing, and
I'll talk about that. You got a
yeah,
2XL
you want to do that
hook,
while I'm getting my materials
size
around?
8 to 18. I think we tied a lot of around 14s. Thread black, pale lime antron, tip, white floss or thread, rear wing, lime deer, body and hackle, white olive or white or olive grizzly. And I tried to dye grizzly and had quite a time Monday. Anyway, I finally got some good grizzly for him. Front wing is calf tail, hackle grizzly dyed olive, and head is thread.
I'm going to start with some white thread. Start my thread base about 1/3 back from the hook eye, right about there. And wrap to the end of the shank. And back to a position just about even with the hook point. And I'm going to tie on some of this Antron yarn. I was really sweating bullets because I wanted to do a green one, and I found that doing green with this green background sometimes don't work out too good. I did some adjusting of the lights today, and it seems to be working. Okay, I think that green is showing up, maybe not as good as
It's
it.
light enough
It looks good.
and it refracts the light a little
Yeah.
bit.
Okay, now I want the tail to be the length of the gap of the hook. There we go. Now, set that aside. And we're going to get right there and just leave the thread hanging there, because the next item, no, I need to come back and we need to put a, right back here, it says in the recipe to put white floss over to cover up the green tail, waist, if you will. I'm just putting a couple coats of white thread, lime deer hair out. I'm going to find out whether I sprayed it down earlier today with static guard. I'll find out if it sticks to me or not. I'm going to stop at the waste bin on the way back to the vise. No, that had to come up with 24 names. I don't want to do that. And, you know, David Crawford sent us this really nice stacker. I think it was David. If it isn't, and I'm identified the wrong person, I'm sorry, but I know it's a gorgeous stacker. Hey, but this guy has been with me for more than 40 years. And I'll tell you what, it and its 23 buddies are just like friends. I can't get rid of them and use the new kid on the block. And Gretchen can. She's got it right now, by the way, David. So it's being put to good use, just not by me. All right, now I need to, got some bad tips in there that I want to get rid of. And I got a little too much bulk in there. I'll get rid of some of that. Now that's looking reasonably good. Now I want this tail to come out just about to the end of, or the wing, the first wing, to come out to just about the end of the tail, just maybe slightly longer. Cinch this up with white. The original recipe calls for black all the way through, and I don't do that. I'll switch to the black towards the end, but we're going to be putting white dubbing on, so why use black thread to put on white dubbing? Quite frankly, when it gets wet, it looks awful gray. So there we go.
I notice that's a flared tail. That's the way
Yeah,
he wants it.
very flared. Yes, that's the plan. That's the first of the two wings. That's why it's called a double wing. All right, now I need to get my hackle. And I'll tie that on. Put that aside, get out some dubbing wax. You can see if this was a short hook that there isn't a lot of room for all the materials that's got to go on it. But if any of you want to use a short hook, you please be my guest. Anyway, I'm just going to put a little bit of dubbing on there because it's not going to take much. That's a pretty small area that we're trying to cover up.
And that's the double magic that's got Amtron in it.
Yeah. Okie doke. I'll wrap this hackle forward. Make one complete turn right there at the base of that first wing, and then I'll just palmer forward over that. Tie that down. And then I'm going to just pull this back like that and pull it back into my material clip just to keep it out of my way for the time being. And now it's time to switch thread. I'll just switch to my black. I could tie on the white calf tail, but I find that sometimes it's a problem getting switched from black to white and finishing up the head, especially as happens to me sometimes with this fly. It's real easy to crowd the head. And I'll just trim off the hackle here just a touch across the top.
Kind of in an angle.
Yep, a little bit of an angle. Looks like I got crazy here and cut one of the fibers here too. So I'll cut that off so it won't show so much. Okay, back over at the materials area. I'll get there we go. We just get a bundle of this calf tail. And I'll just slip over to the waste bin and get rid of the fine stuff at the base end on my way back to the vise. Okay, good. There's a broken tip right there. I'll get rid of it. Maybe you couldn't see it, but I could. And I'll just get that into the stacker. All right, now that looks turned out pretty good. Now I'll just get a hold way out here on the base end and pull any short ones out of there. Some of the ones that didn't get stacked all the way. You see, like right here, there's a few that didn't quite get all the way out. I'll try to pull some of those out. I just want the stacked stuff. And of course, calf tail can have a tendency to not want to stack real good. Okay, now I'm going to set that so that it's about as long as the first wing and tie it in place. And I want you to notice I roll my trigger finger of my left hand forward as I get ready to cinch up the thread. That just kind of keeps that wing there on top of the hook. Now I'm going to trim off the waist. Now here's a place where you can get in trouble. In fact, if you're going for your gold, your silver, and bronze, this is a point where you can make points or lose points. And right here, my tendency would be, okay, well, that's cut, that's a little bit short, close to the eye, but I can probably cover it up with thread. Well, that's a mistake. Let's get rid of any of this extra here so that we don't have to crowd the head in the process. So I'll use this hot point burner to get rid of those fibers that are real close to the head there. There we go. Now I'll wrap forward. Okay, good. I won't have any little white things ending up right there at the hook eye. Now I'm going to wrap my hackle coming forward.
It's really handy to have a long hackle to do this fly too.
Yeah, or if you've have to use a hackle pliers because of a short hackle, then let me back up. I wanted to show you something. This is something that we often do. Dutch Bachman demonstrated it here recently, is when you don't want your hackle to slip as you come down over the trim point, leave the weight of your bobbin there to keep the hackle from slipping down over the cliff, as we call it.
And you almost have to use your fingers to pull it back, because that thread will cause fibers to go forward. So you kind of have to fuss with it a little as you do it.
Okay, and there we go. We'll tie that off. 2 turns. And you've heard this so many times that you can probably say it as well as I can, but this is the point where a few fly tyers sometimes mess up a fly. And they think, oh, boy, I only got 2 turns of thread holding that feather in place. Oh, I better put some more on. And what you end up doing is you put on 15, 20 more turns, and you say to yourself, darn, that'll hold it. And then you cut off the feather, and you got to cover up the feather, and you end up with a good looking fly with a big lopsided head. Well, I got 2 turns right there. I'm going to just pull the hackle back and the fibers and everything, and I'm going to wrap a thread head and a jam knot right in front there. Keep my head small. See how it pushes the hackle and the hackle back there? And then I'll just use a 1/2 hitch tool, put a couple 1/2 hitches in there. I could switch to a whip finish tool, but I'll just put a whip finish on with a couple of turns on my 1/2 hitch. And trim off the waist feather. And I accidentally cut some fibers there, and so you've seen a faux pas. I was fiddling around with the camera behind me when you couldn't see it, and I got a problem there. So I'm just gonna trim it, try to make it not too terribly bad. It's still going to be an all right fly to fish with, but I hosed it up right at the very last. That will not go to the evaluator. Jim Ferguson will not get to see this and write nasty notes to me about what I should have done. Any questions on that? Okay, so no more questions. We'll go to the weekly tip. Well, folks, the weekly tip. Now, this is going to be fun because we're going to get to combine. Sherry Steele is going to help us from Oregon today.
Okie dokie.
Sherry just doesn't know it yet, but anyway.
Well, it would be nice if I knew it ahead of time.
Sherry, rest assured, if I can lead you into the dark, I will. I just
did.
You're going to be in trouble. I can see it right now. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to incorporate braiding into a fly. And in fact, let me share with you, we're working on a braided extended body. And in this case, could very easily be a damsel fly. In this size, probably not. But I'm tying it in a larger size so you can see what's going on. But this is just an extended body made out of marabou, braided. First off, a hot spot of thread put right there to hold the fuzzy part in place, and then I braid the hackle from there. So how do we make that? Well, we're going to show you that, and that comes out of this book over here. If you'll hand me the book there, sweetie. The idea of braiding on flies is it happens to be on the cover fly. The body is a braided body. That's not wrapped or woven. That is the same kind of a plait that you use when you're braiding rawhide or leather or rope or whatever. But anyway, I've done a lot of rawhide braiding, so that's where it's at. But what we're going to do here is just take a very simple 3-strand plait. When you're braiding, it's called a plait. And I'm going to start with I got a bunch of needles and I had to look long and hard for these needles. And this needle, though it doesn't look like it, it has a pretty much rounded point on it. It's a lot safer for me to work with this than than it is with the really sharp ones. And I got these specifically for the kind of stuff that I'm going to do right here.
If what it is a darning needle.
Oh, okay, good. See, Gretchen knows these kind of things. And I'm just going to take some. I want you to notice that there's a green spot right there that I use green thread, and then I put UV glue over it. I think that little spot now, and I know that when you look at a small damsel swimming through the water column, it doesn't have one of those. I think, though, what happens, because I found this to be very effective, what happens is I think the little flash of color, maybe it's the color in the environment, like we've already talked about, but that little flash of color grabs the fish's attention, and then it says, oh, damselfly. All it is an attention grabber.
That's the word I was looking for also describes that. And the word I was looking for earlier is contrast. It provides some contrast.
Yep.
And contrast helps the fish identify something different. So I don't know why I couldn't think of contrast.
Okay, now I'm just going to cut that off. Let me get my feather here. And I'm just going to cut the tip out of that feather, about like that. That's hackle handle number 1. And in fact, that's going to end up being the tail on our fly. I'll just set that down. And let's go down a little bit further in the feather. And I'll just cut out another little piece here. There's that one, and I'll cut out another. That's 3 hackle handles.
And that's Sherry's help.
Yes. Actually, and I have to go back and give Dick Tiller a little bit of credit too. He pretty well alluded to it in one of his books in the late 70s. And I laid one on top of the other. And now I'm going to bring the third one in and lay it on top. Good. I've got 3 of those right there grabbed in my hand. And I'm just going to tie the tips right there on. And it could be anything. UV just happens to be very handy because it can be dried so quickly. I don't have to wait for it to dry in the vise. It's now dry. Now, what I'm going to do is take my needle and pull it out here a ways. This is not the way I would normally do it. It's the way I have to do it to show you what's going on. What I'm doing now is I'm tilting this up so I can divide these bundles into 3s. And keeping track of those bundles is a real pain when you're trying to do it in front of a camera. So I am going to get some hackle pliers to kind of help me out. And I'll take this one over here, stroke everything back, get it as smooth as I can, put a hackle pliers on it. And I'll just set it over on the offside. That's going to be the outside.
Is there a reason you don't dampen those? I know somebody's going to ask that question.
Okay, I just did.
Okay.
And I'm just going to, I think they plait easier if you don't. I'm going to stick one on this side. That's the right side. And now here's the middle one. All right, so now I've got 3. And for you guys that have braided some rope together in scouts or whatever, you already know that you put one side over the middle, other side over the middle, and it's just a crisscross thing. And for any of you ladies that have braided pigtails or your hair or whatever, this is how it goes. Just outside over the middle, and you keep just plaiting over each other. And I've done the marabou things with up to 4 plats, but it's keeping track of it like I have to do here in front of the camera just does not work. I can tell you that right now. Now I'll just slip this hackle pliers right there. And I completed the body. And there's our body ready to go on the hook for
Down
our,
lower. There you go.
oh, I'm sorry. Let me get this needle out of here before I do sacrifice myself. Okay. And there's the plaited body ready to go on a hook, and you can put dumbbell eyes on the hook or whatever you want to do to make your fly sink into the water column. But you got a plaited body there with a hot spot on it. And that's tonight's tip. Any questions before we go any further?
How did you used to do it before you did the hackle handle thing?
I've done a lot of braiding, Sherry, and the hackle handle thing was I just take and tie it in, and I would snip little pieces of stem out and just wiggle them over each other in my fingers, and I'd end up with a body. So, but the hackle handle thing is a way to keep everything under control while I'm trying to keep it under control in front of a camera. When I can bring my leg up here and lay them all down right there and go, but I can't do that. And I don't have a camera over my shoulder to make that work. So that's how I usually do it, is on my pant leg.
That's a pretty good idea.
It's a great way to make damsels, but I want to talk to you about one thing that I discovered, and we're going to dig that out right now. I kind of alluded to it just a minute ago, and that is, this is the waste from this afternoon. And all of you should recognize one of these. It's that little stubby thingy that you pull out that I've always thrown away. Let me tell you what, that is the best size 16 hackle handle you will ever use.
Right.
You take the base that you throw away from 3 feathers and put them together and braid them.
That's it.
And they hold together really nice as compared to these fluffy, contrary darn things. So that's an extra tip. And in fact, here is that same bundle that I pulled out of the feather I used tonight. And I want you to notice that there's a lot of extras there. Well, I can pull a few out here. And the way this is built, you can kind of have built-in hackle handles, if you will. And I got 3 of them there. You pull the tips together, and the only thing you have to be careful of is probably putting white into your fly isn't going to work. Maybe, give it a try and let me know how it turns out. Anyway, so you got a chance to see the extra tip, and that extra little bit of waste that you've been throwing away really could be some great fly tying materials, especially on smaller flies. In fact, some of those little bitties, I never thought about it before, but I'll bet you if you were into tying some really small woolly buggers, I'm talking 16s and 18s, that would make some pretty good tails.
We ready to go to this? Is that next?
It's about time to go to the share business if there's no more questions. Okay, well, now we're into the section we call sharing on Beattys Fly Tying Friday. And this is where we share with you, you share with us, and we're going to do a little bit of both tonight. And tonight we're going to start with Evelyn. And there's the first fly. Oh, I love that. Her fly looks almost as good as yours.
Like that.
Are you going to show us the second one too, or did you do that? Oh, yes. Good job. Good job. Love that. Thank you, Evelyn.
Mhm.
You're welcome.
You
Thank
bet.
you.
Okay, well, then the next one, you never know what's going to show up in my email, and it happens to me on a daily basis. And a couple of days ago, I got an email from Paul in Australia. Took the hair dryer routine and decided that he would fix the hackles on a whole box of flies all at once. Paul, tell us about that.
First off, if you look on my shoulder there, I've got a picture of the first fish first fishes that I ever tied are caught on a fly that I tied myself, and there's a woolly bugger. I just stuck it on the thing, and the woolly bugger was hanging low. And so I got the dryer out and used the dryer to straighten it out. So then I thought, well, I could do my box of flies. Then I thought, why take them out of the box? I did the whole box at once, took the high dryer and straightened out all the.
That looks like a new box of flies, Paul. So it's you can fix them up with the dryer.
Yeah, well, my wife got a new hair dryer out of the deal because I wanted her old one, so I had to go buy her a new one.
That's exactly how I got mine, Paul.
No,
Okay.
you stole my travel hair dryer.
Okay, I stole it and she went and got another one, a lot more expensive one than the one that I stole from her. Anyway, we're going to the next thing.
Mine's a pretty pink one too.
Oh, I
Oh,
don't think
goodness.
it's pink one.
Mine is, what is this,
Another
white?
little pink one.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus, Paul, that's good. I don't know what to tell you. It's good. Anyway, again, you never know what's going to show up in the mail. And Jeff Dosser, I don't know if you're able to speak or not. If you can talk, great. I see you don't have a camera. That's fine. But anyway, we sent these tool blanks for whip finish and dubbing loop, and thought it was a really great thing. And Jeff is making these with red, white, and blue handles for vets for Project Healing Waters.
There, that shows good.
And that gives you just what he's got there. It's a red, white, and blue handle for the vets for Project Healing Waters. And there's a couple of those. And folks, if you want some blanks to make your own handles, you don't need to send them back to me, but thank you to Jeff. Gretchen and I will be using, here's yours, Gretchen. You can have that one.
And Jeff, thank you for your time for Healing Waters. Appreciate
Absolutely
it.
appreciate it very, very much. But anyway, there's that. And I'll be using that one. I'll just hang that right over here, right alongside the one with the braided handle.
This is so cool.
But we wanted to thank you. And to the rest of you, I started out with over 200 of these, and I'm down to about 60. Hint, 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 email. Okay. I got 60 of them to go out, and they're to you. So holler if you want.
Are
some.
you going to share with us how you use it?
That might be down the road someplace there, Sherry. That's a very good idea. I hadn't even thought about that. But anyway, it's a whip finish tool that's also a dubbing loop tool.
Yeah, I would be interested in that because I have about 6 or 8 of them you already sent me.
Well, oh, good. Well, anyway, you can see what a whip finish is, and you take the dubbing loop around this, and then you, do your dubbing loop.
Al, how much are they?
You send me an email, and I send them to you, and you just promise to do good stuff with them. And if it's nothing more than to make some for you and your friends, that's cool.
Thank
Free
you.
postage?
Pardon me?
Free postage?
Yeah, except to Australia, Paul. I'm sorry. I'll send you something else. It'll have to be.
Don't worry about it. I was just joking.
Yeah, Paul, I know. You've got me there. Shall we say the continental U.S. Thanks everyone for joining us for this week. It's a wrap. Next week, we'll be seeing you soon.